Welcome to You Know His Name, a 007 podcast. I'm Tony Artiga, and I'm returning again with my co-host Rick Rodriguez and John Morgan. How you guys doing today, fellas?
How you doing, Ricardo?
Doing good, Tony. How are you?
I'm doing well. So for today's episode, we are going beyond Bond to 1936, 35, 38, and somewhere in the 50s. I can't remember exactly what year, because we're going to talk the Indiana Jones movie series, a movie series that we can all agree owes quite a bit of a debt to James Bond. Of course, also the Republic serials and other films of that nature. But we're going to talk the Bond connection of Indiana Jones and also celebrate the 40th anniversary of one of our favorite films, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which came out in 1981. Subsequently, also came out. What was it? For Your Eyes Only came out that year? Yes.
1981?
1981 was For Your Eyes Only. We would pair it with the For Your Eyes Only episode, but do we really want to do that to Indy? So let's get into it, guys. John, why don't you start off our discussion of the Indiana Jones movies and from the cinematic antecedent that isn't necessarily Bond related, but that kind of inspired these movies.
Well, I don't know. A lot of people throw around that the Indiana Jones film franchise is inspired by Republic serials. And I don't think a lot of people know what those are or have seen them. I've watched a few. They're mostly trash.
Commander Cody.
You got Radar Men from the Moon, or repackaged as Zombies from Outer Space or something. I mean, you got
Batman and Superman stuff.
Nyoka and the Tiger Man.
Flash Gordon, which is a big thing
Flash
for Lucas.
Gordon, George. You've got the Shadow. You've also got Green Hornet. There are
these are things pre the 60s series of those itinerations.
Yeah, and they were also coming hot off of the popularity of the radio series that influenced quite a few of them, including Superman and Green Hornet and the Shadow especially had a radio series that was very popular. So ironically, these Saturday morning matinee serials, these cliffhangers, including Flash Gordon especially, which influenced Star Wars, they were made on a dime. They were made real cheap, real fast.
All in like the valley.
Yeah, and on the fringes of Hollywood. No stars. Most of the cast were constituted of stuntmen or people willing to do their own stunts.
Right.
And they are kind of the real salt of filmmaking if you go back and watch them, and you just see all of the risks they're taking, whether literally or with their own lives, or just there's no money in this fucking.
They're heavily Western oriented, or in the sense of like a lot of Westerns, and in that tradition of like big stunts. Like people bitch, Batman can't move in the costume. He moved in those ones. Because all it was a fucking semi skin tight outfit.
Because when they would
ears and a cape, but Batman was fighting. He was moving around. He was running and jumping out of windows. And
then when they would light the set, on fire or create these explosions, any charges like that, you better believe they shot one take and moved right the fuck on. So
hope you make it, Cliff. Action.
Yeah. So understanding the origin and impetus and inspiration for the Indiana Jones franchise, you really do need to look back into an era where these were Saturday morning comic strips come to life.
Mm-hmm.
And they were for children. They weren't for the audiences going to catch the A-list picture.
And that's a day at the movies.
Yes, a day at the movies was a very, very different experience. Back when those serials were showing, you would get a newsreel, you would get cartoons, you would get these serials on top of that, then you would get the movie.
Then Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, right?
Yeah. So it was
your A picture. That's what it comes from. Your B pictures and then your A picture.
The Indiana Jones franchise harkens back to a time that was very lost It is very lost on people what going to the movies is and what it kind of should be in a lot of ways. Like, you shouldn't feel like when you walk out of the theater that you got gypped. There should have been something that you saw at your day at the movie theater that where you were entertained. And it may not have been the movie that you went there to see. It could have been something you saw in the news, something you saw in a cartoon, whatever. But there was always this variety of entertainment that was shown. And the serials were just another chapter of that. And they were less the movie and more just something for the kids, basically.
For sure. I actually a nice little experiment. When I went to school visual arts, I had a teacher, Jack Harris, who he showed us. He decided that one day because every once in a while he would show us a film to kind of talk about comic book storytelling and how this film was indicative of comic book storytelling. He showed us some Hitchcock, but what he did with one film, and I forget which one it was. He decided to make it like a day at the movies where he would show us a Republic serial. He showed us the first episode of Commander Cody, and then he showed us the film, kind of made it like a thing of it. And it was really, and I thought it was such a really nice thing that he did for us, which I was always very charmed by it.
It makes a difference. I went to a house one time, brought to you by Morgan's Films, and the guy had a projector up and it was for Halloween.
You were talking about me?
Yes. I wasn't ruin it. You ruined the fucking story. God damn it. No, yeah, you put on the trailers. It's YouTube, but you're still putting on that atmosphere of like blah blob. It's like, okay, we're gonna watch Zombie next, but it was good. It wasn't just like, okay, let's watch fucking, I don't know, insert now pop star, whatever.
All right, now the movie.
Right. And it makes a hell of a difference. And I know we've worked at and been to some movie theaters where even though it's not like it once was, at the very least, it's content that's movie related. It's not like
AMC's first look
at the Nexus, Nissan, like Nissan Sport, check out this TV show. It's like, I don't want to look at a TV show. I'm at the fucking movies. Like,
Yeah. I think the closest thing that we get to that is kind of, and I think if we have any listeners that are looking for a touchstone as to what that kind of experience was, I think the closest thing is like what the Disney movies and the Pixar movies have done recently is that they'll have a short film that plays in front of the main feature.
They've been doing that for a while, though.
Yeah, they've been doing that for a while.
And we have movie theaters like that, do pre-shows that the content is cut and catered to the film, and that kind of stuff.
For sure. And
you mean Redacted?
Yeah.
I love Redacted.
I love Redacted. My favorite place in the world. But yeah, there's something to that. So it was just something like they're one of the few that are still doing it.
Yeah. It adds. It really adds. And like I think, Disney or even those places that do that, it just makes a difference. And we got a taste of it sometimes when I was a kid. I remember God damn it, I think it was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids had a cartoon ahead of it.
It did. Yep. It was a Roger Rabbit cartoon.
Roger Rabbit, that's right. And funny enough, Batman, even though it was a commercial, it did have a funny cartoon promoting merchandise for Batman, but it was Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. So it was shameless in that it was promoting, but it was a cartoon and stuff.
Bugs Bunny and Batman can't go wrong.
Yeah,
But you know what? One thing that John touched upon is about the sort of the nitty gritty approach that these films took, and Steven Spielberg kind of saw Raiders of the Lost Ark as an opportunity to sort of kind of reel back his more excessive indulgences as a director, because like his last couple big movies kind of went over budget and a
known staple of late 70s auteur
movies. and Steven Spielberg kind of
something that a lot of the romantics, just real quick, a lot of the romantics don't like to mention about the death of the auteur cinema at that time. They're like, and then the blockbusters came in and ruined everything. And it's like, and all of those great directors you're talking about all overspent the farm on their last pictures. So it's a little bit of like, yeah, okay, it's sad, but they did it to themselves.
It's like, oh, but nobody wants to talk about
well,
that.
no, because that's not romantic. Because it's not the image of, oh God, you know, and then the money one. It's like, well, yeah, because they were spending outrageous amounts of it, the filmmakers.
Yeah, you know, it's like, you know, it's when needlessly so. But anyway, but good on Steven Spielberg for kind of like, I guess, recognizing that's what he wanted to do. So this was the first time that he really decided, okay, I'm going to limit the amount of takes that I do for these movies because I don't want to get too overindulgent. This is the first movie where this was the first time that he let an extensive amount of second unit do their own thing with the entire sequence, that entire desert truck chase sequence in Raiders of the Lost Ark, entirely second unit, and that was the first time he ever did something like that.
Well, yeah, when you get it, he had a legendary second unit director take care of it.
Yeah, exactly.
They all storyboarded together. So there you go. It's like you hire the best, you're gonna get the best.
For sure. But
I think his name was Michael B. Moore, actually.
Yes. He Mickey. He calls him Mickey, so very, very lovingly in the behind the scenes material.
And my lover, Mickey. God, he was great.
But also this is the Bond themed franchise. So let's take it back to where the Bond connections are and how this.
Who wants to tell the story? How apparently this came about?
I would love to, Rick. If you
all right, so John, take it away.
So Spielberg and George Lucas are waiting for the grosses to come in on Star Wars opening weekend for Star Wars, and they were away, I think in Hawaii, some island, something like that. The grosses come in, they could breathe a sigh of relief, and George is really happy with the results of Star Wars. So, and then George Lucas turns to
no shit.
Yeah, he seems like, oh, good, it did better than expected. That's I'm sure that was his. I mean, George Lucas ecstatic isn't much different from George Lucas. Like mildly.
The movie came in on. Yeah, okay.
He's just a pragmatist.
Yeah, good for him. But anyway,
see, it rhymes.
It's like poetry. Anyway, he turns to Spielberg and asks what he wants to do, and Spielberg says, "I've always wanted to do a James Bond movie." And Lucas turns to him and is like, "Well, I got that beat." And lo and behold, the rest is history. He pitches him the idea of this archaeologist, Indiana Smith. Spielberg doesn't quite care for the Smith surname, so Lucas is like, all right, what about Jones? And it was as simple as that, and a legend was born. So yeah, and there were a lot of influences that went into Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Republic serials, as John mentioned, the idea of this globe-trotting adventure like a Bond film that has a different leading lady in each film. Obviously, the Indiana Jones movies are a little bit more MacGuffin heavy. I mean, they're strictly MacGuffin heavy.
Well, Indiana Jones has the power of God in like every single one, so
yeah, pretty much
backing his ass up. I think they can go a long way for a gadget.
Pretty much. But also, he was a little more
Temple, well, Hindu.
A la Humphrey Bogart in Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which is another great film that I recently discovered. That is probably one of my favorite discoveries of the last year or so.
It's one of the best ever.
It's so good. And so yeah, and all these kind of cinematic antecedents kind of form to make this beautiful little picture. So let's get into the first of these pictures, Raiders of the Lost Ark. This movie is fucking amazing. It's great writing, great characters, great directorial work from Steven Spielberg. I can't say enough about it. I mean, Karen Allen is fantastic. Rick, why don't you give us your thoughts on Raiders of the Lost Ark?
It's okay. I've always thought it was really overwritten. No, I'm kidding. I mean, what can be said that hasn't been already said enough? I mean, I got the opportunity to actually see it in a theater in about 2012.
Yeah, same here.
And the difference, and I've seen that movie a million times, like all the first three movies I'd seen a million times. But what really struck me when I got to see it in the theaters, because I got to really feel it, is that movie moves like a bullet.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just talking about Quantum, but this one it's not frenzied, but its pace is just like go, 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 while not sacrificing storytelling.
Yeah.
And story beats. It's not the deepest movie in the world. I would actually argue that the movies, in terms of Indiana Jones as a character, they get deeper in the sequels, which is something I don't think they get enough credit for, because everyone always goes, Raiders is really the best one. The other ones are just kind of, rape treats or, the racist stuff. And so, but Raiders is kind of thin in the meaningful front. But I think where its grace is definitely in a perfect amalgamation of all the influences that Tony mentioned. And I mean, its influence on Bond is essentially, you have an opening, even though the credits play during the opening of the film, its structure is like a Bond movie, where it's an initial set piece that kicks off the movie and or plot and or story, introduces the character. I mean, it's got one of the cool hero reveals in all of movies, and it's definitely harkens back to like a gunfighter intro. It's cool about it, as though it's kind of like done as if he's the bad guy, but he's the hero, where it's like you just see him from behind, and then one of his men, as they're traversing through the jungle, all of a sudden thinks he can get the drop on him. And here's the get the click, and then it's a cut close up of the back of Indy's head, like he hears the click of the gun, and you just see a close up of the whip, and the thing flies and hits the guy in the hand, and then the guy runs off, and Harrison Ford steps out of the shadows into light, and you see him, and it's like, bam, Indiana Jones. If it was Scorsese, they would have stopped, still framed, and said, like Indiana Jones.
All my life, I always wanted to be an
archaeologist. Yeah, and so you have, and then you have the whole opening with the famous ball roll. And its structure is like a Bond thing, where it's like you have that initial thing, and then you have the mission set up.
Yeah.
Where Bond doesn't have an M or a Q, but Brody kind of is his M and Q.
Yeah.
As well as father figure. And this is prior to even any knowledge or any idea of Henry Jones Sr. as a character.
Yeah.
So for the function of Raiders, that's really Brody's character type, is the father figure, the M, the Q. He's like, helps them set up the mission. They talk to all those, the CIA guy, not CIA, but the Secret Service branch or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, his Q
Army Intelligence, actually, I think it is.
His Q is Sala, though.
Yeah, kind of, but he's more his buddy than anything else in that story, more than Q ever is.
No, movie doesn't try to fit everybody into these archetypes.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's not like Willow, where Willow to me is a big straight up. That's Luke Skywalker. That's Han Solo. Like,
yeah,
that's a whole thing.
It's more like Willow. Correlations. I think the correlations are there, but given enough freedom to be their own thing, you know what I mean?
Well, because they're not just basing it on Bond. I mean, it's just the Bond inspiration is there in the debonaireness of Indiana Jones.
Yeah. But
then the Humphrey Bogart, like, kind of world weariness, and there's that aspect to it. He's not just a do-gooder hero. He's got an edge. He's rough. Hero. He's rough around the edges.
I think what kind of sticks out to me about Jones is when we first meet him. Jones, Indiana Jones.
Call him Dr. Jones.
Is when we meet Dr. Jones, he is a shameless treasure hunter, and his role as a professor, you kind of see, is like, this is just how you make sure that you don't go broke if you don't find another thing.
Well, there's a little bit of the Clark Kent Superman dichotomy thing to it. I mean, it's not a secret identity, but it's like the two sides of him.
He's got the glasses look, and then he's got the hat and jacket, and the real Indiana Jones article look. But I'm saying, like,
girls at the front saying, writing "I love you" on their eyes.
There's that we can talk about.
But I think it's interesting that what is it? The Temple of Doom takes place just before the events of Raiders.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think there's actually a real reason for that, and installing the chronology there. It's that I don't think George Lucas or Lawrence Kasdan or Steven Spielberg had a plan.
Philip Kaufman. Don't forget, Philip Kaufman is very involved with the creation of the first film in script. And
I forgot he was in on that script.
A lot of people.
But I read that.
He gets short shift a little bit, but it's not really fair.
Well, it's because Kasdan gets the screenplay credit.
Yeah.
But in the inception of the character, the idea was not to make him an altruistic hero. He's just he's a Tomb Raider. He's someone who's out there stealing things and selling them off. He's just a treasure hunter. But I think that became his arc, where he starts as a simple treasure hunter, just someone out there looking for
fortune and glory, kid.
Exactly. And that's really what his main focus is just before Raiders, right? But that's why I think why I value Temple of Doom more, is he kind of learns that he likes being the hero.
Well, funny, I mean, we're jumping ahead a bit, but like I think it's funny that Temple of Doom technically takes place before, but to me, it really is spiritually, it really is in terms of a character journey, it really is a sequel to Raiders, because like in Raiders, Indy doesn't really learn much.
Well, in the exploits of Raiders, sure, but in Temple of Doom, he has a real arc.
I would say Raiders, he learns humility, because you know what I mean.
He learns that in Temple of Doom.
I would argue he learns that in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I don't know. Like the notion is introduced in Raiders in the conversation with the bad guy. You know what you have with a hero and a villain.
Looking at you, Mark Forrester.
You know, where Belloc is telling him, he's just like, I am a shadowy reflection of you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you and I are the same. Belloc even gets him to drop his rocket launcher at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
because he's like, you want to see this opened up just as much as I do. And remember, a fucking fly goes in Paul Freeman's mouth and he never spits it out. And you're like, that guy ate a fly. And they kept going, and he kept going. Anyway,
why the
sure. I bet Lucas digitally erased that. And so it's like, the guy's like saying, like, you're just as fucking greedy and bad as me.
Used to be.
Yeah, used to be. He eventually changes because Indy's not helping like the people of Cairo or anything like that.
Not like in Temple of
Doom. He's not really interested in that. And like, it's almost maybe perfunctory that he's on the allies side of this.
Yes.
He really just wants that arc.
Yes.
Because at the beginning of the movie, he's like, because Brody is like warning him. He's like, I don't know, man. It's not just like fighting Nazis. We don't know its secrets. And he's like, Marcus, what are you talking? I don't believe in ghosts and a bunch of superstitious nonsense. I'm going after one of the greatest artifacts in history. And he's like, besides, you know what a cautious fellow I am, and throws the gun in the suitcase.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I think that there's a nice little. I mean, it doesn't engulf the film. It's not like overpowering, but I think that there is an arc of like learning humility, because his whole thing at the end is like he's getting tied up. They're doing this whole ritual, and he tells Marion, like, close your eyes, like.
That's actually based on a scene cut from the movie. Where it's a little bit, I think, remember the middle where they talk to the guy's there with the symbols on the thing, on what is it called, the fucking medallion, and the guy explained more kind of like the rule of the arc, don't look at it, you will die, but I think they went with it, let's not spell it out, let's just, you get it.
Yeah, and I think that was a strong. Ironically enough, I think that was a stronger choice. I mean, look, it's the character work is. I would agree that the character work on Indy is done.
Yeah, not knocking the movie, just more talking about it in overall sense of the series.
For sure. I would agree with you guys that the character work is more extensive in the sequels.
Yeah.
Than in Raiders, but I think in Raiders there's still a little something. So I wouldn't dismiss it outright.
He definitely has a heart. I mean, he's not just like, Marion blew up. No, whatever. He's sad.
Well, there goes another one, Cole.
Yeah, he goes on a drunk, for fuck's sake, Yeah. So he's ready to die, essentially, because he's just like, you want to talk to God.
So
let's go see him together.
Run down on Raiders. So, John, why don't you give us a little? What are your thoughts on Temple of Doom? It seems to have an affinity for that particular film.
The sequel. Well, it's the second film.
The second film, the prequel, the sequel, the per-sequel.
I think. Well, Temple of Doom stands out as the black sheep of the franchise for a lot of people, or at least it was until Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, and I found it really strange because I always really enjoyed that movie growing up because I liked how off the rails it was from the first one, which is all very based in Christian theology. And this time around, they're like, we're going to go for Eastern theology.
Well, it's really Judaic, really, the first one.
Okay, it's Judaic theology in the first one, and then they go Catholic in the third one. In the second one, they draw inspiration from Hinduism and also this idea of Orientalism, and like everyone always casts this horrible shade over Temple of Doom, saying that it's racist. The Indian government, prevented them from shooting in Delhi because they read the script and found it to be offensive to their people. And so it gets cast out by a lot of people as just being intolerable. But I do have a deep love for it, as it is, besides being a derivative of Republic serials. And, I was going to get there. I was going to say, aside from it being very influenced by Republic serials, very much like the chapter before it, this one decides to go deeper and reach into some classic work by Rudyard Kipling, including, it references Gunga Din. It references the man who would be king. And it is drawing not just from the adventures of those cheap serials, but it's also drawing from like very classical literature and fun, exciting adventure work that inspired them as kids as well. So like, again, they're going back to their childhood, finding all the things that inspired them and magnifying them times 1,000. And again, I think also something to mention about these first two movies in particular is that the budgets were significantly low for the splendid success that they reveled in. Temple of Doom, just at a glance, only cost $28.1 million to produce. The one before that, Raiders, I think, was somewhere around 20. And they both turned over $300 million in box office. And I think it goes to show that them having that restraint with the money that they invested in these things, it doesn't affect the quality of the film, because they literally are working with just what they need as opposed to just what they want. And so as a result, Temple of Doom, I think, has some of the most impressive miniature work, especially in the minecart scene, and some really, really fantastic set pieces when you get into the blood cult aspect of the movie, and the whole like Shiva shrine they have set up for sacrifices, and the overall like set design and production design of the palace and all the dark corridors behind there as well. I mean, it's just full of really fantastic visuals, especially the way it opens is like a completely different concept. It starts with a Busby Berkeley number, which I think gets lost. Maybe a lot of people out there aren't familiar with who Busby Berkeley is, but if you're familiar,
but you can tell it's a fucking musical, and so people got to realize, like, oh, this is different.
I mean, you don't expect the second Indiana Jones movie to start with a Cole Porter song.
But that's I think something that for audiences is confusing, but I think also, again, dates back to this era of like, do you remember going to the movies on Saturday mornings and seeing all these things just before the actual movie really started and getting excited? And like, they're like, fuck, why do we have to just limit it to an opening action scene? Let's do a musical number and then do the action.
Which you end up getting, you end up getting anyway, exactly.
So they pile it on and give you as much entertainment up front as they can before they really start the movie.
Hand it over, Lau.
Yeah.
Antidote.
All like at Club Obi-Wan. And it's
Club Obi-Wan, that's right.
Really fun opening, and I think is also a very clear homage to the James Bond franchise, even just in the wardrobe.
That one especially, because it's a very James Bond intro. The number's over, he walks down the stairs, and he's in the tux, very James Bond-ish.
White tux. It's very Goldfinger, but also very Humphrey Bogart, again, in Casablanca.
True.
Which is a nice little throwback there. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that about Temple of Doom. Now, Last Crusade for me is my favorite of the Indiana Jones movies. I think it has some of the best action. I think that it has everything that Raiders has going for it, plus a really beautiful emotional center. And we have in this movie, we actually have 3 Bond holdovers. We have 3 Bond actors who are in Indiana Jones just to kind of really tighten in the Bond connection. Salah, who was also in Raiders of the Lost Ark, was in The Living Daylights.
Who we mentioned real quick. I just want to say the character was originally conceived as a kind of Gunga Din type. And they
Salah?
wanted Danny DeVito. Yeah, and they wanted Danny DeVito maybe to play it, but then they realized that maybe that won't work and all that stuff. And then they went with John Rhys Davies.
That's actually
an Egyptian,
half true. They did want Danny DeVito, but they couldn't make the days work with Taxi. So
that's fortunate because I think
it would have dated the film. I think it worked out for the best.
Horribly. I mean, like if we're gonna go after Temple of Doom at the very least has Indian actors playing Indians,
Yeah, for sure.
Racist.
Yeah, but well, we'll get into that. But yeah, so we have John Rhys Davies as Salah. We have Julian Glover, who played Christados in For Your Eyes Only. He plays the main villain of Walter Donovan. And of course, you have Indy's dad, who's played by the greatest James Bond, Sean Connery. But it's not just that Sean Connery is in this flick, and it's the OG James Bond and an Indiana Jones movie. It's some of the best character work in an action movie that I've ever seen. I absolutely love the back and forth between Indy and his dad. The MacGuffin is the Holy Grail, so it's kind of a womp for in terms of MacGuffins. It's not nearly as impressive as the Ark of the Covenant, but it's more than made up for by the idea that the quest for the Grail is a quest for a relationship with the Father, and
it becomes a deeper thing than just
exactly. It becomes a much deeper thing. You have a wonderful opening sequence that is Indiana Jones as a teenager and kind of getting his iconic hat from another Tomb Raider that he meets, and
who becomes his emulation.
Exactly.
He's emulating that guy. It's the jacket, it's the hat, it's the hair, it's the shirt, it's everything. Like he saw that guy and was just like, I wish I was you.
You know exactly. What? I just rewatched it, and I watched that scene especially paying more attention to it, and I thought to myself, like, why would you want to emulate someone who just like fucking bested you? And I thought about it more, and I was like, to kind of prove him wrong.
No, I don't read that. I don't read that way at all. I don't read it that way at all. The reason that I think that Indy wants to emulate that guy is because at this point, Indy has a really strained relationship with his dad. His dad doesn't respect him. This guy, even though he's a Tomb Raider, actually gave Indy probably his first shred of respect.
It's his version of a hug. I'll give you my hat.
He gives him his hat, and he's like, hey, you lost today, kid. You don't have to like it. But it's like, you know what? Props for besting me. Like,
now make me a sandwich.
You have my respect. And gives him the hat as a fucking sign of like respect, one man to another. And that's a very powerful thing. That's the way I've always interpreted it.
It kind of hints at that when Indy escapes via very Indiana Jones, where at the end of a big scenario or movie, he has to somehow escape and or best the bad guy through a magical means. He gets in the magic box and escapes. And Spielberg's camera goes in on the guy, like, damn, and he kind of gives a smirk of like, damn that kid,
It's so great. It's really, really
and then Indy's father doesn't even look at him.
Exactly.
He just had his book, just like count to 20.
No wonder he wants
go do something else while I'm busy.
Yeah, no wonder he wants to like fucking emulate the grave robbers because his dad is like.
They should have said that later in the movie. He gave me a hat.
He gave me love. But I think that there's something beautiful about that. And that's the thing. I think that more so than the other movies, there's actually character stuff that we can actually like discuss and argue. Oh, I think it means that way. I think it means this thing. And it's all valid. But this movie, you can't have those conversations if the character work wasn't as strong in this movie. And that's really the big takeaway.
I don't think it's too far away, though, from what John said, because he does say, like, you lost today, but it doesn't mean you have to like it. That in and of itself is kind of a thing of like, yeah, you're right. I don't like it, and I will spend the rest of my life.
No, for sure.
And I'm gonna get that cross.
No,
and
for
then
sure.
Catch up with them, and he's out there fucking getting it.
For sure.
Cut to him on the boat.
Exactly. Which is why I didn't tell John that he was wrong. That's why I said I didn't agree, because I didn't see it the way he did. But
I saw the text you sent him, and I thought they were pretty harsh.
But you guys know what I'm saying. Like, we can't even have these like honest disagreements of interpretation without the character work being as strong as it is. And I think that, and you also have a really great leading lady in Allison Duty. Another Bond holdover
from View to a Kill.
From View to a Kill.
What's her name? God damn it.
Jenny.
Yeah. Mayday guessed it's Grace Jones gets to say it when she's like floating by them.
Get Zorin for me.
Zorin for me.
So yeah, you have her in there. You have and you know, the main villain is Julian Glover, who's like this American business tycoon. Turns out he's secretly working with the Nazis to get the Holy Grail. Hitler actually has a cameo in this movie, played by an actor who's I can't remember his name. But
Hitler's son of a bitch.
Yeah, they shot.
He gets Hitler's autograph.
Yeah, they shot the tank sequence in the same desert where I think they shot The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and a lot of spaghetti westerns of
right, Spain.
Yeah, in Spain in the 60s and 70s. I think Sierra. There you go. And I don't know. There's more of a western feel to the Last Crusade.
All of them have a little bit of that always. You know.
Well.
Except Temple of Doom, not so much.
Yeah, Temple of Doom doesn't have that. I actually wouldn't say that Crystal Skull has it
Temple.
either. And the thing, and I don't know, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah, it's in a desert, but that alone doesn't.
Well, maybe it's just in the Indy as a figure. It's he's a pirate. He's a gunfighter.
Yeah.
He's an anti-hero, and he's a hero. He's a rogue. He's a charmer. It's like a Chris Christopherson song. He's a poet. Yeah.
He's a poet. Then we wrap up the series with Crystal Skull, which is not a movie I hate, but let's be real, massive disappointment. There's some stuff that I like. There's some stuff that I'm not. There's some stuff that I'm like that I find very questionable, i.e., CGI monkey swinging from vines. Why did we need to do that? But one thing I do appreciate about Crystal Skull is that, much like how the first three were, that their cinematic antecedent was the Republic serials of the 30s and 40s, I actually really like the idea of like, okay, this is going to be kind of more of the 50s sci-fi B movie version of Indiana Jones. I thought it was a very clever idea, but it kind of fell apart. I wasn't quite as taken aback by aliens in this movie, because I'm, as a big Indiana Jones fan, I've read a lot of the books.
But they're not aliens.
They're interdimensional beings.
Yeah.
So and I kind of had to remember.
Aliens.
So so here's my experience. I read a lot of the Indiana Jones books. It gets a lot dumber than fucking interdimensional beings. There's literally a book called Indiana Jones: The Dinosaur Eggs, and it's every bit as stupid as you think. So
we gotta get these eggs back to a lab.
Exactly. So from that respect, interdimensional beings, aliens, I'm just gonna call them fucking aliens, doesn't sound like such a raw deal. But I can also understand, not having been exposed to that crap, why Crystal Skull was such a disappointment. So John, we wanted to talk, but you know what? We're gonna have that discussion. Which one is actually
just gonna pull a full U-turn and get the fuck out of Crystal Skull.
Don't look at it. Keep your eyes shut.
I'm sorry. Out of all the 4 movies, Temple of Doom is still my least favorite. It really is.
Yeah,
I don't understand how.
Yeah, I don't know how it could outbeat how you all right.
It is. I mean, I don't hate any of them. I really don't. I think maybe because I went in with Crystal Skull with not the highest expectations. Like, look, It's not gonna be better than. I don't think it's gonna be better than Last Crusade. It's not gonna be better than Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm just gonna go in and enjoy myself. And
they didn't even try.
I don't agree.
No, they didn't. They were like, "Hey, people just like it if we fucking fart and it's on screen, right?" And like,
we fucking fart.
Okay.
I don't think the movie's good, and I think I did go in with very high expectations, and the fact that they came out with something that like almost was like, did anyone even have a script? Was there a plan, or did they make this like on the fly? Because that's what it feels like. Like Indiana Jones gets a son, and there's not one endearing moment between them at all.
Yeah, agreed.
They're just
I would
like
also pose out there that if you want to just take a look at the design of Crystal Skull as a production, I'm not talking about production design. I'm talking about the mere formula that they had for producing these movies. Just look at the budgets. Just look at how excessive the budget for Crystal Skull is compared to the first 2 or 3 Indiana Jones movies. Because, like, at the very least, when they did Last Crusade, they're like, all right, this is the send-off. Let's double our budget from 24 to 48 million. Still not a lot of money. Still enough to do really great things in the movie. Make sure that the visuals are really well put together.
Time,
48 million?
48 million is quite a bit for the 80s, I think.
89, right?
89,
wasn't Batman like only 50? I mean, but wasn't Batman like 50 or something?
I think 89.
Well, I'm saying that they doubled their budget to make sure that the send-off for that movie was solid. That's understandable. But the 2 movies before that, working with way less and really batting it out of the park. And when you look at Crystal Skull, an excess of money to work with, endless resources, there's almost no excuse for why it's as inconsistent as it is. And I think a lot of the problems come from, like Rick saying, like, they couldn't agree on the script. I think even Spielberg has spoken up and said that he didn't like the script. It didn't agree with the script, but by the time they were already in pre-pro, like, you can't stop that train from moving. You got to just keep rewriting it until you're there, and you just work with what you have. And like, working out these problems were not like, once the scenes and the strip schedule was put together, you can't cut these set pieces out from your production. You have to work with them. So they were trying to be resourceful with the story and the resources that they laid out on the table. But why do you want to work sci-fi into a franchise that's thrived mainly on theology and ghosts and the supernatural?
And see, that's the main point where I would disagree with you on. Now, look, I'm not pretending this movie's by any means perfect, because I actually do agree.
I didn't make a point. I'm just asking, why would you want to do that?
Well, so then I'm answering your question. Question. Because I do agree that I do agree that obviously the movie has its issues. You know, I mean, the overuse of CGI, the budget was a lot more bloated than it needed to be. I would have preferred if it was something that was a little bit smaller, so they can kind of have those restraints and kind of really make something a little bit grittier. But the thing is, to me, it still has that theological bent, because there are a lot of civilizations that their religious bent is that they think that there was an extraterrestrial force contributed to their society. You know, I think there is something to that. There's something legitimate to that, at least to the study of myth and how it relates to certain cultures. And I think it's a very cool angle. You know, I think that it was actually a very natural angle to go from, okay, so if we're going to make an Indiana Jones movie that is a 50s sci-fi B movie, but we still want to keep that sort of theological bent that the other 3 have had, it's actually a very natural fit. It wasn't mine for all its potential. I definitely agree with you there. But I don't think it was this hard turn that some people make it out to be, where it's like, oh man, the like, one's Judaism, one's Christianity, one's Hinduism and Eastern religions, like, and they just did fucking aliens. I'm like, well, that's because there are some cultures that literally that worship, they may not outright worshipped aliens, but that extraterrestrials beings were part of their own theology and eventually what we come to understand as mythology. So I thought it was a pretty clever take on that, had they minded for all that it was worth. I don't necessarily think that they did. I do think that There is some really silly action in the movie, but I also think that there's a lot of fun action. I think that there's some fun moments. Karen Allen being back was very welcome. I really enjoyed her character return. I thought Kate Blanchett as the main villain, Irina Spalko, was really, really strong. I really loved her look. I loved her severity. I loved her energy. I liked the backdrop of the Cold War and, the Red Scare kind of coming home to Indy and kind of affecting him. Like, you want to talk about cancel culture. That was a fucking time where that shit was rampant. And I don't know. I dug the premise. More than I dug the premise on Temple of Doom. My thing with Temple of Doom is I find Willie Scott the character incredibly annoying. It takes me out of the movie so utterly completely. And
but so she's a character in the movie. Like, what I mean by that is like there's a full.
Yeah, we're like comparing apples to oranges at this point, because I think fucking like the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull from its inception is not focused. I agree, it's a great backdrop to use the 1950s Red Scare to motivate the socio-political backdrop, just like they used World War II in both Raiders and Last Crusade. But it's just a retread when you want to consider that. And there's not a lot of creativity behind it. They don't do a lot with it. And I don't know why they thought 50 sci-fi movies gelled with this whole like franchise they built up upon archaeology. Like the Ancient Aliens trend and popularity in those theories started to blossom a lot more at that time. So I guess it's like borrowing from the trend of the times, but
yeah,
there was just nothing there wasn't a lot of intrigue for me to get interested in what was going on.
I would make the argument that if you're really doing a sci-fi, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, thank you. I mean, look, I just don't agree that it wasn't creative, because I do think that something can be super creative and have creative ideas, and sometimes they just don't work. And I think that that's an issue with Crystal Skull. And I absolutely agree that there's quite a bit in this movie that doesn't work. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not defending Crystal Skull as this great parathon of cinema or a misunderstood masterpiece. I'm just saying that given my druthers, I prefer it over Temple of Doom, a movie that I'm very charmed by, mind you. I like Temple of Doom quite a bit. But when I break down the elements of like, what do I want out of an Indiana Jones movie, a fun Indiana Jones movie, I get more out of that from Crystal Skull than I do from Temple of Doom. Part of that is because Temple of Doom is so different from the other films that it's a divisive risk, and that's fine. I respect it for that. And if you're asking me which is the more daring film, what's the bolder film, clearly that's Temple of Doom. But which movie out of the two gives the most that I want out of what I respond to in an Indiana Jones movie? I would say that to Crystal Skull, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I obviously there are moments that are very silly in Crystal Skull. That's why to me it's second to last. I'm not arguing that it's an undiscovered gem. I do enjoy it. I think it is creative, and I just think and I do think that there is a focus. I think it just fell apart, and I think that's a perfectly fair thing to say about a film. I think that there were some great moments in there, really great creativity.
So we're not allowed to say anything bad about Crystal Skull?
No, it's not that. It's not that. I just didn't want to get to a place where it was like, oh, you're an idiot because you're like, oh my God.
You are.
You're entitled to your opinion, Tony. No one's going to tell you you're wrong.
Well,
I lost audio.
Well, yes. Yes, you're entitled to your opinion. Yes, you like Crystal Skull. I don't. That's fine. Yeah, Rick, what are your hangups on Crystal Skull? Just to elaborate, because what can you say about it that I haven't said if you don't like it?
Well, I guess, if Tony says he didn't go in with high expectations, I guess that's my thing, is that like I did go in with like mad high expectations because of Last Crusade, because I love Last Crusade so much that I thought they really, and I know there are people in the world that say Last Crusade is actually overrated and it's just Raiders retread. And I'm like, yeah, in a superficial way, but you're not paying attention to what's deeper. Like, I know a lot of people actually have a gripe about how they treat Brody in Last Crusade. And I remember one guy, when I was growing up, he was all like, yeah, but Brody in the first movie is like fully like engaged and he's totally like right behind Indy every step of the way. And I'm like, you're thinking of a movie in your head. Because Brody is there to serve as like a father figure and as a warning person in the first movie. He's not fucking Watson sitting there being like, we're off to next, Indy, like punching Nazis or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like they're totally making up what they feel like. And I kind of feel that way a little bit, all due respect. I love Karen Allen, but to the whole Indy was made for Marion thing. Like they were meant to be together. I don't see it in Raiders. Like they're a couple, they have a history together, but in terms of this, yeah, they were always meant to be, weren't they? I'm like, not really. She's not his equal. She can kind of hold her own, except when she can't. You know, she can certainly drink a guy under the table. She's a survivor, but she's not like intellectually curious like Indy. You know, she's not. Yeah, she's not like, it's not like that same thing. I can't believe I'm going to do this again. It's not like Ilsa and Ethan Hunt in the Mission Impossible movies where she gets sense to the kind of meant to be together. Anyway.
But that's the thing. I feel like that all goes out the window because their chemistry is so palpable in Raiders. Like
I just don't see the match made in heaven thing. They do work together. They're great together. Like,
yeah,
they're the two of them together is part of what makes that movie great. But then when they get together in Indian, I was going to say the whole title, why? But then when they get together in Crystal Skull, it's like in the moment when they first see each other, that's great.
Yeah,
because like she comes out and it's really well done. She's like Indiana Jones, just like in the original, and he gets Harrison Ford for the first time in what, like 20 years in movies, smiles.
Yeah, he like gets goofy, like
he's like, hey, like, and it's like, holy shit, that's really cool, you know?
Yeah.
But then that's kind of the problem with the whole third act of that movie. It's like there's no emotion behind, hey, that's your son, you know, like
I know.
I don't want to lose Marion, you know, like nothing. Everything becomes so cartoonish and kind of inconsequential.
It almost would have made it up for me if they didn't get together and she instead said, we had our chance, but what you really should focus on is your being son. A father.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been cool. What is that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I also thought that it would be a massive improvement if it had been a daughter as opposed to a son.
I think that was initial, right?
Well, they thought about it. Apparently, Steven Spielberg didn't want to repeat himself with the daughter plotline from Lost World Jurassic Park.
And she's a gymnast.
Yeah, and I was just kind of like, well, how about take the opportunity to improve on what you didn't quite nail in that movie? But that's besides the point.
Nah, I don't like daughters. Spielberg's from Brooklyn.
No.
Can I also just say Mutt Williams' introduction as the Brando Wild One is wholly inappropriate. I think it sucks because he doesn't measure up in any scenario where he's expected to just kind of hold his own, really. I mean, he does well enough, but where he gets fencing lessons or any of that, I mean, like you repair your motorcycle.
I get the motive to do like he's a rebellious kid type thing, especially that time period, you know, with the advent of those type of movies.
Sure.
But of course, here we go. Hindsight 2020, blah, blah, blah. Let's play fan fiction kind of crap. It maybe, I wonder if it would have been interesting if A, daughter, B, if it's a kid, he's not like Indy. He's like his dad. He's a fucking nerd.
Yeah.
And his son is just like, oh, my son's a nerd, you know, kind of, or like,
would they given him some sort of arc to get him outside of his shell or something?
Well,
especially that he's a fencer.
Yeah. Well, the thing that whatchamacallit, Steven wanted to do apparently was like wanted to make Mutt what Indy was to Henry Sr., where Henry Sr. very much wanted to be Indy to be much more academic, and Indy was more of a wild spirit who wanted to be like an adventurer and was like more about like the X marks the spot kind of deal. That making Mutt the greaser kid would have been Indiana Jones' worst nightmare for having a kid, and I was just kind of like, I don't know.
I get it, but I think the problem is within the movie. Does he really even give him a hard time? He's always he seems always patient with him.
Well, that's the thing.
Part time.
Until he
sneezes.
Sorry. Until he finds out that that's his kid, and then he starts doing the "you bet I am," and you're going back to school or some shit. And
that's a funny line. I admit that was fun because Ford's funny. I think Ford's good in the movie. Let me say that. I think
so too.
If I'm going to give you a positive tone, I think Ford's good in the movie.
I think so too. I like that he gets to be a little bit more comedic in the role. He likes to be a little bit more surly in the role. He's just
awake. People forget there was like a dark time for Harrison Ford where it was just like, it's like, is he dead? Is he like ever gonna be like awake in a movie again?
Yeah.
Did you catch my movie Firewall?
Yeah. No, Harry, I didn't.
I'm a tech whiz.
Okay, so let's
Where's my family?
So let's put
they're right next to you.
Let's put the Crystal Skull discussion to bed because I think we've kind of.
And another thing.
So Temple of Doom is my person.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure, for sure.
Tony's cocking a gun right now. Sure thing, bud. Sure thing. Spinning the chamber. No, like if it was going to be a 50s sci-fi movie, and I know other people have said this, but like if it really was a 50s sci-fi movie, it would be in a fucking laboratory the entire movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, and that's the thing.
Or they'd be on a spaceship, or they'd be fighting a plant monster. Yeah. Like that was 50s sci-fi movies. They're still doing Indiana Jones things, so I don't see how. And I guess it's either A, they're full of shit, or B, they really never thought about the fact that they're not actually doing a 50s science fiction movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that I kind of interpret it as like that was their way in, and they kind of made an Indiana Jones version of what they would do with a 1950s sci-fi movie if given the chance. But I would agree that the cinematic antecedent is not the relationship is not as strong here as it is in the first three.
I know there's a version of the script where it's called Indiana Jones and the Saucermen from Mars.
Yeah.
And I haven't read the whole thing, but from when I read in terms of like synopses and stuff, that was more 50s.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it literally ended with like the army fighting aliens and stuff. Or like, and I'm like, yeah, that's the Earth stood still. That's War of the Worlds stuff. Like that's 50s sci-fi stuff. Like we're in the jungle and we're in the Aztecs, or Mayans, excuse me. We're not really the Mayans, but you know what I mean? Like offshoot thing of that. That's still old school Indiana Jones stuff. That's not 50s sci-fi. You know what I mean?
And you're right. I definitely agree with you that I think they did drop the ball in relating it more to the cinematic antecedent. There's no question about that.
And the movie's not deep felt like Last Crusade at all.
No. Well, that's the thing. I mean, Last Crusade. That's part of the reason. It's like, look, it's been 19 years. I just want to enjoy. I want to have a good time watching an Indiana Jones movie. It'll be the first time I watch one of these on a big screen. But yeah, so we'll table the Crystal Skull. I think we've bored our listeners enough. We want to get to the good shit. Although Temple of Doom is my personal least favorite. It does have some of my favorite indie moments.
I just think it's actually a good movie compared to what other people have said about it.
Go and watch it. That's my only recommendation to people. Like, you think it's so fucking bad. When was the last time you saw it? A lot of people.
Jesus Christ.
Well, no, really. A lot of people.
You think it's so fucking bad?
No, really. Some people are just like, that movie's trash. And then I say, when is the last time you saw it? And most people are like, no, I don't know. Like when I was a kid or like in high school or something. And I'm like, so you haven't really watched it as an adult? Like, you don't know.
I mean, I could definitely rub people the wrong way, especially the race stuff. I mean, and there's nothing in it that's like.
I think the most racially trepidatious content in the film has to do with the dinner scene. And that is literally gag after gag, has nothing to do with Indian culture.
and is just meant to be for laughs. And yeah, I mean,
it makes me laugh.
It is funny. I mean,
mostly because it's Short Round, because it's not
purely absurd.
Well, when she's like gets her soup finally,
yeah,
the fucking eyeball, like I can't remember the actor's name who plays Short Round. It's just like gum pops out of his mouth, and he's just like, like Jesus Christ. Like, those are eyes.
The whole scene is like whole scene is.
I like Short Round.
It's not a commentary on Indian culture. That scene. It's a
I get
Three Stooges act.
But imagine we see a Spanish. He's like in a foreign Spanish country, and they're like, let's eat kangaroo brain. Not kangaroo. Jesus Christ. Let's eat monkey brains.
Yeah.
People might be like, yo, what the fuck, man?
Like, I mean.
We eat rice and plantains,
and that's the thing. It's more that it's not so much that I'm like trying to cancel Temple of Doom. It's just more like, look,
why are you wearing the shirt?
Rick and I are Latino. Rick and I are also pretty familiar when we see a stereotype that we're not crazy about in a movie that is otherwise pretty well done. We're kind of like, really, are we doing this again? Or are we doing this shit? Like, aren't we past this? And it's like, it's not enough to take us out of the movie, but it's just kind of like, really. So I can kind of understand people having that relationship with Temple of Doom. It just kind of comes with the territory.
If you're Indian,
yeah.
We have our good friend. I don't know if he wants us to name drop him, but he's Indian and he fucking loves that movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a different. It's more of trying to respect.
His name is, and Tony, you can bleep this out in the edit. His name is Robbie Kush.
Hold on, guys.
His address is
Social Security. Oh my God, we could have Robbie as a guest, as a call-in, but not a real guest. Like,
all right,
hello.
So yeah, it's more about just respecting where people are. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie, but at the same time, it's like I'd be hard pressed to say like, I see why you don't want to revisit it for that.
But I guess for me, it's how much of it is honest, like, ugh, and how much, you know what I mean, is like bandwagon.
Does it aim for honesty? Does it aim for realism? Does it aim to illustrate that this is the way Indian people are?
But that's the thing. This is the thing that I'm just trying to illustrate. Do I think it's malicious in its intent? No, I don't. I don't think it is that way. But if people are uncomfortable revisiting that movie because of what is in there, well-intentioned or not, I can understand that. Now, if someone tries to tell me, "Oh man, I don't want to revisit that movie. The movie's trash. It's got this, that, and the third," and they haven't seen them since they were a kid, that I agree with you, John. Like you can still give the movie a chance. And
some assholes out there like, you're gonna love it. It treats Indian people how they really are.
I mean,
and you're like, oh,
wow.
that.
Whoa. Why did you like this movie?
Right.
Look, but that's the thing. I enjoy the movie as something that swings for the fences. I don't like the Willie Scott character. I don't care if she is a character or not. I think she's incredibly annoying.
But Indy,
I would just argue that is the point of
that is the
character.
Point.
And
I don't
she is
care
not meant
point.
To be a romantic interest for Indiana Jones.
Until he whips her.
The love story of this film is between him and Short Round, and that is actually, to me, amazing that they decided to abandon any romantic story and just be that it's about friendship.
All right, but
for them.
Here's the thing. This is the thing. I appreciate that too, because there's an element of that in Last Crusade. It's the love story is not between Indy and Ilsa. It's between Indy and Ray connecting with his father. So on that respect, and I know Temple of Doom does that, but Last Crusade does it better.
Well, I would argue you're both wrong and both right. It's like Crimson Tide. No, I would actually argue that it's what it is in Temple of Doom. It's a kind of it's a prototype. That's why I say it's actually a spiritual sequel to Raiders in terms of Indy's arc overall. Yeah. Like if we're graphing it, it's like Indy has to get over the fortune and glory thing. Short Round really helps him with that.
Yeah.
Because Short Round's like, you know, they literally become slaves for a portion of the movie.
Yeah.
You know, and Indy literally goes dark side, like like eat your heart out, Harvey Dent, you know, like, and so Short Round helps him, brings him back from that. And so after that, Indy is like a changed man. I'll see you.
Yeah, listening.
Oh, Indy's like a changed man at that point. And it's because of Short Round. Like that kid saved his life by burning him. It's not really explained how that works.
The strength of their friendship.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, kid.
And I definitely think that's the strength of the film. But at the end of the day, if one of the characters is distractingly annoying, like that's still a problem. Will he stop?
Fine, but I think for me and John, I think the meaning of that relationship outweighs anything with Willie Scott.
I also feel like there's not some mysterious reason why Willie Scott ended up in this movie. You know, sometimes supporting characters, are not always there to help the protagonist. Sometimes they're there to foil the protagonist, and that can mean also hinder them in a lot of ways.
I think she's a lot of fun.
She is.
If anything, Kate Capshaw plays it too well.
I think she's fucking annoying. I think she's.
I'm also of that very, very narrow demographic.
So does Indy.
People that really likes the movie. In the movie Blow Up, what's the name of the character or the actress who plays her? You know, she's in.
I mean, Blowout.
Blowout. Sorry, not Blow Up.
You're talking about Nancy Allen.
Nancy Allen's character in Blowout, for example,
she Sally?
Is she's like a good comparison to the Willie Scott character in Temple of Doom, because you know she's not the most likable character. She's very dim. She's not bright. She's getting into trouble, and unfortunately this is just the only material witness or suspect that John Travolta has to deal with to solve this problem. So he's going to use her to the best that he can. He's stuck with her like it or not, and it becomes an obstacle for him to get around. And I feel for Kate Capshaw to be rustled into his mess. You know what? She is annoying. He should have just ditched her at any point. He can just throw her off the raft and they're fine.
Yeah,
right?
She had the antidote.
Right, but after that,
that's why he takes her along when they jump out of the building in Temple of Doom.
That's the only reason.
She has placed the antidote in her dress.
But he also
he's like, come on.
He's still moral enough to look after her because she is a person and she's attracted to her. So it's as simple as that. It's this very surface relationship, and like,
well, you got that great banner scene.
Yeah.
Where they're like, where it's just like, no, I'm not going. You're coming to my room. Yeah. No, you're coming to my room.
It's just ego versus ego. It's amazing.
Right. They're very super fit. And Short Round's just trying to sleep.
Yeah. When the guy shows up out of that painting, one of the most shocking reveals.
They do it really well.
It's really great stuff. I mean, listen, Temple of Doom is rife with awesome stuff. There's so many sequences that they couldn't put in Raiders of the Lost Ark that they kind of did build the story around Temple of Doom to fit these sequences in. I mean, that's kind of an open thing. I'm not saying anything controversial here, but I think it works very well in that respect. And I think that there's some great stuff in Indy. I think my favorite single shot of Indiana Jones is in Temple of Doom when they got the da-da-dum bum bum ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, and they're kind of
the camera cart the camera cart as a literal dolly and lighting thing.
The dolly shot, and she's just looking there, standing there looking like a badass. I mean, I think it's got some great moments, but I mean that I fucking hate that.
Well, then I would say really rewatch it, because if that's like it sounds like that's your main hindrance. She does not bring apart the movie, because I think the construction of the entire movie actually does work. It's so wild and insane because it does take a section of the movie. Well, it's kind of that thing of like, it's so much light comedy, even though it's very violent from the beginning to end. Like all of these movies, frankly, the first three movies are violent.
Yeah, they are.
And it's so much light humor, even though it's gross humor, like the dinner scene, and then it's kind of light screwball comedy after the dinner with him and Willie Scott. Yeah, Willie. And then the bugs. In which she does help.
Yeah.
His, the great shot of we are going
to die.
Yeah, and then
Amazing.
She does start it again.
But I think what's good to point out about her character and how she fits into the story and why she adds to the humor so well is like, because you're not invested in the romance, you can laugh at her. You can easily not like her. You don't like her for all the reasons Indy doesn't like her. And I think that's fair. It's earned. She's not supposed to be likable. She's supposed to be the ball and chain. She's supposed to be the princess to be saved.
She's got things that are stronger about her than Indy. She hates She hates bats, monkeys, elephants, but she's not scared of a snake.
Not afraid of snakes.
unlike Indy.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's one thing with finding a character unlikable and kind of enjoying the unlikability and the the back and forth, but I'm sorry, she just takes it too far for me.
Well, it's not. It's not just like it's not like countering you. I just want to talk about the things I like about Temple of Doom.
And that's the thing. I do like a lot of things about Temple of Doom as well. I mean, I just overall it's my least favorite of these movies because there's stuff in it that's a little bit more unpleasant than I'd like to see it in Indiana Jones movie. It's not why. Everything I love about the series is perfectly encapsulated in Raiders and in Last Crusade. Temple of Doom does something way left field, which works for a lot of people. For me, results in the least enjoyable of the four movies. While I still enjoy Temple of Doom.
It works for me because it actually gives an arc for Indy and it actually envelops him as a hero.
Yes. Yeah, that and I agree with you there. It has a very strong arc for Indy, and it does do those things well.
Yeah, there's too many memorable sequences in that movie for me to just like, yeah, it's the weakest of the bunch, or no, it's not very good. I'm sorry, there's just too much in it that it's like, no, this is a good movie. It's wild.
Really
it's out of its
dismiss.
It's out of its fucking mind.
But I'm not dismissing it.
No, I know you're not, but other people that do.
I wanted to just also point out, I was pointing out earlier that the very obvious Rudyard Kipling influences and how like they really stuck to their guns and they're like, okay, we are now in India. So now it's time to go on the Rudyard Kipling adventure. And when you want to consider, the era in which those books were written and what they were exploring, I mean, like the story of Gunga Din, I mean, it's about like white British colonists in India going on the grand adventure of the Far East. That's the story that they're drawing from. So like, there's not any real basis in fact in the movie. It's mostly just a romantic view of what the great adventure was at that time. But this one is not aiming for like, isn't India so weird? It just sets you up for this experience that nothing is sacred. And that no, there's the sacredcy of the stones and the people, etc. But I'm saying that once you go into the belly of the beast, there's this notion that nothing is sacred. And that is something I feel like you don't get out of the other movies. They're dealing
with pure evil.
That's right. I love that. That is the antithesis, and that it's something not tactile enough. You can say it's Mola Ram, but even Mola Ram is possessed by this evil force.
Yeah.
Even he, while he's controlling this cult, is under control, under the spell of this evil.
I think that's what's so satisfying is that when Indy bests it, it's so they get to that bridge and Spielberg just draws out that sequence. And he's so good at that and Last Crusade with the tank. Like he's just great at like
third act.
Knowing this pace is the scene. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be fucking because I mean now that tank chase in Last Crusade would be like and it's not that rhythm at all. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's so good. But in the bridge and Temple of Doom, you're just like, how the fuck are they going to get out of this?
Yeah, it really feels hopeless.
And then Harrison Ford is so good. He's like, fucking tying his leg around a rope. And giving that psycho look.
It's so amazing knowing that he was sick throughout so much of that production. And, they had to do that big fist fight also in the mine. Yep. And a lot of that was handled by his stunt double.
Oh, yeah. He was
always sick shooting these?
Yeah,
in Temple of Doom, he got outrageously sick. He also had a herniated back from
I heard about the back
elephant and had to undergo this experimental papaya enzyme procedure to get taken care of. And then, of course, when he returned, he was getting sick all the time. He he had the flu, he had a cold. Every day he was sick, and especially on that bridge scene when you see his face. He looks so exhausted. It's like, it's not makeup. It's no acting. He's just tired. He's really, really tired of making this fucking movie. So it's fueling him, and it's really coming across. It's very permeated in the film. And
I'll wrap it up. But then, it's the key thing in Indiana Jones. It's like he has to actually believe, and they spell it out in Last Crusade when it's just like, believe. You must believe, boy. And it's no different in Temple of Doom or even Raiders, but in Temple of Doom, the whole thing of he literally, whatever you want to call it, like the forces of good enter into him, or because he starts
humility.
He starts saying essentially, I guess, like the equivalent of the power of Christ compels you. You betrayed Shiva.
Yes.
And he's like, he's got the fury of God in his voice.
You don't deserve these stones.
Yeah.
These stones are sacred. And it's meaningful, not to him, but he knows it is meaningful to the people that they belong to. Yeah, and he was ready to just steal those stones and run. And there's a great turning point that doesn't have a lot of attention drawn to it. But when he goes and collects the stones the first time, he is ready to leave.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then he hears those kids.
And it changes the whole story.
Yeah, honestly, that's what I like about it.
Exactly. That's why literally when those kids come flooding in behind him at the end of the movie, I am a fucking wreck. I can't handle it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I really am. I'm so proud of him and everything that they achieved.
I'm proud of him.
I am. I'm proud of him. I'm proud that he learned humility. He learned that to rise above his own greed. And he saved the day. He literally saves everything.
John is Brody.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna eat. I'm probably gonna eat crow for this.
No, I'm not.
You're
hold
totally
on,
right to feel however you
guys.
Feel.
For fuck's sake, let me get this out. I'm going to probably eat crow for this, but I think I have to, based on what I just heard, probably have to amend my statement and concede that maybe Crystal Skull is my least favorite of it.
Well, it's not.
Well, I'm glad we can inspire all of these memories. And
I think I'm not going to vote. I think I'm not going to vote for Trump.
No, I would never. And if you don't like it, tough shit.
Right.
I'm talking about to our listeners. Look, because the thing is here, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I am, while I'm sympathetic to the argument of that this is an example of the white savior storyline, I would also argue that there's an element to this movie where there's an acknowledgement that Indy realizes that that he was ready to walk out with something that was precious to a people that he had never.
Not his. He's a grave robber.
Yeah, exactly. It's not his, and it's not his to take, and he was ready to, but realizing that there's something other than yourself, because in Raiders of the Lost Ark, he loses the Ark to the government. So there's a whole, and there's subterfuge. There's not subterfuge. There's like undertones to all of that.
Well, the great thing on that, just to enter real quick, Tony, is that because it's the whole thing of like no one has learned the lesson, and the Ark ends up just where it began, buried. And thousands of years from now, someone's going to be like, "Hey, what's this?" Ah!
Yeah. But the thing I do enjoy about Temple of Doom, that I will concede is great about Temple of Doom, is the lesson that you got. You have like these things are precious to other. Our artifacts are more than just, things to be studied. They mean something to people. And if you can bring it back to the people who they meant so much to, I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think that, you know, in a weird way, it's kind of a story. If you wanted to put it in these kind of terms, it is kind of Indy checking his privilege a little bit, and I think that's actually really cool.
You're Indiana Jones and his woke journey.
I think there's something pretty cool. But wait, what did you say, Rick?
Indiana Jones and his woke journey. The poster.
And the Temple of the Woke.
Oh, for sure. But I'm not talking about, like, you know, privilege in terms of. Like,
no, he gets
right.
It's like, yo, man, this isn't about you.
You were 100%
it's not about you.
right.
Like this is a guy who, you know, is pretty well off. He's able to gallivant around the world, and these are you know, a bunch of villagers who, like, they this is literally all their biggest thing.
That's their fucking key to, like, a good crop, to food, to you know, water flowing down their river. You know,
that is also derivative of the two primary Rudyard Kipling stories that are referenced in the film. Yep. And that is because those stories also are centered around quote unquote white saviors, right? But what did they learn? They learned by the end that you were a greater man than I, Gunga Din.
That's right.
And they learned.
Gunga Din will make you cry.
Oh man! Oh, I cried so hard at the end of Gunga Din. It's so exhausting and sad. And you learn
that one, Tony.
For something that's supposed to just be a buddy adventure in the Far East, it is so much more than that. And I think, you know, I'm white. You can take the piss out on me. That's okay. I have no culture, but I will go ahead and say, like, you know,
white devil.
I hear a lot of people critiquing the white savior side of stories, and I don't want to get too macro. I want to keep it focused on Indy, but it's really easy to kick this one under the bus and say, oh, Indy's just the white savior. But I do think that we're pulling out a lot of the stops and illustrating that, like, the movie does not illustrate Indiana Jones as a moral character from the beginning, and that he earns morality by the end is his journey.
Yeah.
And it's not about saving. I mean, in a way, saving the people helps him save himself.
And that's where he's at in Last Crusade. Yeah. I mean, like, there's a big, sorry, go ahead. And I'll say this after you say it.
It's to me, it's not, I don't even think about it. It's about saving himself in Temple of Doom. I think it's more about, you know, he has no intention of saving anyone. He just wants to get an artifact. And at the end, it's just doing the right thing. That's literally that's literally it. It's as simple as that.
Well, that's what I mean. He learned what the right thing was finally.
There's Mookie,
and that's the thing.
There's Indy.
Yeah, he's not saving himself in any sort of existential way. He's just like, you know what? This doesn't belong to me.
That's right.
And that's the difference between him at the beginning of that and Raiders and the beginning of Last Crusade. In Last Crusade, it's not like Fortune and Glory. It's like that belongs in the museum. That doesn't belong to you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
you know, it's for the betterment of study, not so this motherfucker can own some sacred cross.
Yeah.
That he's going to lord over other. It's just like, no, you know, that doesn't belong to you. And then he has to learn in Last Crusade, because he's all he cares about is his father. He kind of could give a shit about the Grail. He's excited when he's discovering things, but then when he has his dad, you can tell he's just like, now let's get the fuck out of here.
I gotta tell you, I actually am very impressed. You because you talk about production design on these movies. John mentioned it quite a bit, and I think all of these
awesome.
Movies,
all of them, yeah,
all of them have really, really great production design. There's money spent, and you can see it in all four of them. I think there's some beautiful work done in all of them.
Oh yeah.
But there's one moment. I think probably my favorite moment of production design is Last Crusade, where, you know, the Holy Grail was something that Steven Spielberg didn't really want to touch on. He didn't want to do until he kind of figured out how to make it work with the son storyline, because he thought it was the father-son storyline, because he kind of thought like it's kind of very a bleh sort of MacGuffin. But the idea of that it's a very simple, humble design of the Grail it's almost meta.
That was profound as a kid.
It was huge. It's like no, it's not this like crazy multi-jeweled
every fucking cup you see in a church.
Yeah, pretty much. You know what I mean? It's this very simple cup that's made of wood, and I think that's lined with gold. I think
it looks that way. I think only because of the reflection.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I thought the same thing when I was a kid. That's the cup.
Oh, okay. That's fair. So it's lined with a very simple metal, I guess.
Can you imagine? He drinks the water and he looks at the night. And the night just is like, no.
No.
Nah, like let him go. It's like, and I think that there's a beautiful thing about that, where it's like, because keeping it simple not only makes it more profound in a way, it also really
that's the humility thing coming again.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's such a small detail, but it's part of the reason why that one's my favorite.
No, that is absolutely. It also helps when you see a Nazi motherfucker melt, turn into dust before you.
Yeah.
So you're like, that's not the cup. That is definitely not the cup. Maybe I need to think opposite here. Yeah. Oh, that's opposite. Right. He's a carpenter.
Yeah. No, I think that's my favorite. I also think I think Last Crusade. Well, what do you guys think? I was
gonna say this, Tony, about the whole journey thing, because like he's ready to take his dad out and like let's get home, let's get out of here.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, no, we gotta get the book.
Yeah.
He's like, what are you talking about? Like, I got you. Like, I saved you. He's like, you don't understand, son. We have to save the world.
Yeah.
Because the fucking Nazis, he says, the armies of darkness are going to march all over the face of the earth. Like, do you understand?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't about just you and me not getting along and I didn't raise you right and all that shit. Like, we got to put that shit aside and we got to save the motherfucking earth from these bastards.
Yeah.
We gotta save this motherfucking earth. I would have loved if Sean Connery belted that out at the crossroads. What do you mean, going to the lion's den? Dude, yeah. We gotta save this motherfucking earth.
That's the trailer line. It's like a rock song.
Fucking, or Sam Jackson's like, I've had it with these motherfucking Nazis with this motherfucking grail.
The Jones are back. Right.
Welcome to Earth.
That's right. Cocks your shotgun.
Gross. Gross.
But yeah, but I think it plays into where the series is at that point. It's not just about besting the bad guys. It's about higher things.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah. And I think that's a very astute observation. I think
he has a whole team at the end. He's got his buddies. It's like the 4 fucking musketeers together.
It is. You got Sala. You got
Brody and Dad.
Back. Rest in peace, Denholm Elliott. Unfortunately, passed away as a result of the AIDS epidemic. And he was sorely missed. But I'm glad he had a little cameo in Crystal Skull as a statue, which was nice, I guess.
Yeah. I guess.
Why do movies do that now? They did that at Ghostbusters too, the remake.
Yeah, well, not to go too deep down that rabbit hole.
Was he a statue?
They have a bust of Harold Ramis hanging out at some point.
Yeah. See, that to me is worse because in Indy, it makes sense that the college would have a statue to someone like Brody, who is a patron.
In a way, it's like Brody kind of stops those guys from chasing Indy anymore.
Exactly. So there's
kind of thing.
It's the way it's not done. It's not done great, but it's it makes sense. It doesn't come out of left field. In the Ghostbusters,
they should have just had his ghost, and the Russians are like, ah!
But in Ghostbusters, like the old Ghostbusters don't exist. So what's the point of having Harold Ramis there? Like if the Ghostbusters
are one of them related? I don't remember. I haven't seen that movie since it came out.
Okay, I'm gonna probably cut all of this, but this is my only thing. I want to go down this rabbit hole for a second for Ghostbusters. Bonus feature. This is my problem with that Ghostbusters movie. It didn't shit or get off the pot. It didn't know whether it wanted to be a clean reboot without referencing the other movie, or if it wanted to be a full-on sequel. If that movie had been a full-on sequel, it would have been so much better. And I'm totally fine with the cast. I love those 4 women. They're great actors. Like I have no problem.
I think they're all great. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all great.
Even bring up that stupid bus.
The whole movie's fucking improv.
Yeah, and look, I have no problem with that. My problem with the movie is that it keeps reminding me that there's a better Ghostbusters movie out there.
that movie had a script.
Yeah. So my whole thing with this movie is this: why? Because there's a whole thing where there's hero worship of the Ghostbusters, where really they're just blue collar guys.
Didn't they do it in the trailer? It was like 20 years ago.
Exactly, 30 years later. So you're thinking, holy shit, it's gonna be it's gonna be a sequel. It's gonna be a proper sequel, and it wasn't for no good reason. So the whole thing is, you have these two. You have the two.
Are they or aren't they?
You have Melissa McCarthy and you have Kristen Wiig, who are doctors. They're hilarious, but they're doctors. They're inspired by the original Ghostbusters. They want to become Ghostbusters themselves. There's paranormal activity because the Ghostbusters have been out of commission for a long time. They gather this team. They start doing all this kinds of research. And then they realize that we need to track down the original guys. And then you find out that fucking Venkman and Dan Aykroyd's character, they literally disbanded, not because of anything that they got defeated or they had some monstrous thing happen or a betrayal or anything like that. Fucking Egon passed away. The heart of the team. They just didn't have the fucking will to go on because, for fuck's sake, like the lifeline of that team wasn't there, and it's like so they just closed up shop. They were just blue collar. They're blue collar guys who their thing wasn't exterminating roaches or anything. They were just Ghostbusters, and it would have been this really great moment where it really humanizes the original team, gives them a moment to fucking gives them their moment of glory later on in the movie when they they come back and do their thing, but lets these new characters become the new Ghostbusters, because you can kind of have this thing, this beautiful thing where the world will always need Ghostbusters, but also have this metaphor. It's like, listen, the world will always need people who are just willing to do this kind of work.
I've got the title,
and that there's great dignity in there. You know what I mean? And that you can still be.
Well, that's inspired. A story. They didn't do that.
Exactly, they didn't do that, and that's what that movie should have done.
They gave a half-ass, like, oh, we're fighting now, we're friends. By the way, remember when we were fighting? We're gonna finish that arc, and I'm like, I thought you guys were friends and fine. Like, what is this?
It's ridiculous.
It's like, oh, I think it's a big problem, Tony, that they improv the whole movie, because I think they don't know where they're going, and so everyone's just like doing like, oh god, Chinese food, and it's just like, what is this?
God, please, let's talk about something else. I'm sorry I brought it up. I didn't mean to.
Right,
I just
let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to Last Crusade.
I'm with you on the disappointment, though.
Yeah. So I mean, I think God, what the fuck were we on? God damn it.
We've been all over the place.
You were mentioning production design.
Oh yeah, the production design, the simplicity of the Grail. Yeah, got it. So I think that's just a great moment. I love I think that's called the Petra Temple, where they shot the
in Jordan,
which is absolutely beautiful.
It blew my mind when I found out that was a real place.
Yeah,
it looks like such a fucking fantasy, like, whoa, otherworldly, and it's like, yeah, that's real. What?
It's so great. I think I really love that when they go to the detour they take in Germany. The giant
Scottish law.
Yeah.
I am Mickey Mouse.
You are
How
Scottish
dare
Lord. I mean, and I think that's the movie that probably allows Harrison Ford to have the most fun with the role, to be honest.
Well, they look like they're having a ball.
Oh man, you can feel it too.
Yeah.
You can fucking feel it. It's so great.
But the main thing is, and I think the journey from Raiders to Temple to then and last, where it's like the final reconciliation has to be with his father, it's like key to why a lot of us feel that one so satisfying.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, it's Nazis again. Fine. It's not bold like Temple of Doom, but it's emotionally satisfying.
Oh yeah.
Because of that thread with the father, where they're very disenfranchised with each other. It's still yucks. It still laughs.
Yeah.
But they take the time to give you the weight behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie stops just for them to have a conversation about like the things they didn't do.
Yeah.
It's like regret, it was the only way to grow up for you too. And of course, the dad's in fucking denial. He's like, "Oh, actually, I was a wonderful father." And it's like, what? It's like, and he's like justifying not being there. It's like, yeah, I made you strong. And he's just like, what you taught me was that like these old fucks were more important.
Yeah.
You know, and essentially it's like, and you created me. Like, I don't know if we mentioned this prior, but like the two things of Indy, it's like the father, and then that's the dichotomy, the duality of Indy. It's like when he's teaching, he's his dad. X never marks the spot. Remember that.
Yeah.
That's so counter to everything he's ever learned when he's out there adventuring.
Yeah.
But that's not who he is in that moment. Right now, he's Professor Dr. Jones. You know?
For sure.
And
most archaeology is done in the library.
Right. But it's like, you fucking liar. Like,
everybody's got to go their own way. And I think that's something that the movie also embraces. And it's not like explicitly said, but like,
well, the dad disapproves of every little action he's taking.
And that's okay. And because he also, you know.
No, but that's part of the fun of it. It's like he's fighting the Nazis on the motorbike and he's like, no. You know, and only when he becomes and he takes the flag to joust is the dad like, yeah.
Well, there's a very
like
simple revelation where, like, you know, where Sean Connery's character remembers his Charlemagne.
Oh, I love
that's the moment.
And that is the nice sort of revelation that Jones has about why he and his father are two sides of the same coin.
Right.
It's that where he comes at it with all guns blazing. His father's the intellectual approach always, and the whole search is built upon all his research. Jones doesn't know the first place to go. He always goes back to the book.
Yeah.
Right.
In many ways, he's going right back to his father. Is how it really reads.
But then his father learns from him there's only so much you can do from the book. You got to roll up your sleeve and get your hands dirty.
Yeah, and so obviously when they have to go through the trials, Indy is the one to go through the trials, not his father.
For sure, and it even starts before then. I mean, it's a funny scene, and like people remember for the comedy, but it's kind of encapsulates everything that I love about their relationship, what they learn from each other. Where it's like, those men were shooting at us. Like, I know, Dad. It's a new experience for me. It happens to me all the time.
It's so weird because like that's Sean Connery.
Yeah.
But he's so great an actor that you fully buy. He's just like, he's very taken aback. He's like, but it's a new experience for me. You know, it's like weird. He's shaken up, you know.
He's shaken, not stirred.
There it is.
I love it.
Would you guys
set it up? I'm taking it.
Maybe shift the conversation out. I feel like we've covered the movies really well, like more back to Bond and the connections.
Hey, sure, absolutely. I mean, I'm probably gonna have to cut the film discussion by about a third for each of them to fit.
That's fine. That's okay. I figured you probably will.
It's all just Tony.
No, it's none of me because I'll probably get ripped apart by the fucking listeners if they find out.
Bro, I got a whole episode where I'm about to cry. So you can.
So
and it's not even you taking a hit. Like,
yeah. I mean, we did talk. I mean, that's a good conversation. We did talk about like the Bond connection, about the structure and everything. But yeah, let's go. Like, you know, there's also like I mentioned, some actors. You have John Rhys Davies, who played Pushkin, I think his name was. Hold on, let me look this up.
Yeah, there are a lot of casting carryovers between the Jones franchise and the Bond franchise, where like you see actors being borrowed from one franchise to the other. And then I even noticed when we were talking about Last Crusade, and I rewatched it, and I also just recently rewatched Tomorrow Never Dies, and noticed that the German officer in Last Crusade shows up as a very minor bit character. His name is Michael Byrne. He shows up in Tomorrow Never Dies as just like a British naval captain and has like 5 lines.
Yeah. Also, fun fact: I think Nick Gillard, who did did the stunt coordination for the prequels, shows up in a small role as a German officer as well. But
I ended up finding out he did like almost 90% of all the stunts in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Like, I think Christian Slater's like in the commentary, and he's just like, "Yeah, that's Nick. That's Nick. That's Nick," and it's just like the whole action scene, and you're like, Jesus Christ.
That's hilarious.
Well, that's also something I guess I wanted to point out too, is like I think Jones, the Indiana Jones series, obviously draws a lot of inspiration, not just from like the Republic serials in terms of like really boosting up the action. Because if you ever watch those Republic serials, like it's they're like, they roll the camera, they're like, all right, action, go, and they just let them roughhouse for like 3-4 minutes.
It's a wide,
and it's like undercranked, and they're just like, we're only shooting one take of this. You can trash the set, you can do whatever you got to do, but just make sure at the end Flash Gordon wins and you exit that way. And then instead in Jones, it's more calculated, more set up. And I think the whole stunt department in the Indiana Jones franchise it borrows so much inspiration from all the action set pieces and fights and things from the James Bond series. And especially a great distinction is in Raiders. I know it was very unplanned, but they get into that big fist fight by the airplane out in Cairo. And that always, to me, felt like a very, very Bond fist fight type scenario.
For sure.
Him versus this Gollum style villain.
Well, it's an odd job fight.
Exactly. Yeah. They're almost owed in a lot of ways since they borrow that trope so much from the James Bond movies. And I think that
weirdo henchman.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, the visual style of the characters, definitely.
For sure.
It's like he's like a Peter Lorre James Bond henchman.
100%.
Tote from Raiders.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And I love yes, sorry. You're right. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, my favorite moment of his, and it feels like something that a Bond villain would do, is when he takes out that chain, pulls it out very slowly, pulls it takes it out, really stretches it out menacingly.
What's he gonna do?
And then he turns it into a coat hanger. It's like perfect.
You know the story behind that?
No. Go ahead.
Well, it was a gag that they tried with Christopher Lee in 1941. And it didn't quite work. And John Reese, I think it was John Reese Davis, and he asked Steven, like, didn't you try that? He's like, yeah, but it didn't work it. So I'm gonna make sure I do it right this time. He's like, I get it. Yeah, work the gag until you finally get it right,
No, for sure. I agree. I definitely agree.
Forgetting Spielberg did 1941. I gotta rewatch that.
Yeah.
It's a wild movie.
Yeah, probably my least favorite of Spielberg's movies, but still a lot of fun. At least of what I've seen.
You haven't seen Always.
Yeah, I gotta see that too.
I don't want to see Always. I kind of want to leave it as I like all the Spielberg that I've seen. There's just some I like more.
Well, it's not like one of those like you're gonna turn green. Like, oh Jesus Christ, it's still got his virtuosic filmmaking. It's just I don't know how to put it. It's like you feel the legwork of trying to move you and entertain you, and it's just it's got no magic to it.
That sucks.
It ain't no kick the can.
Yeah.
Kick the can.
Yeah. It's just such a great moment. I'm really glad that he revisited it in Raiders.
I mean that precipitates Marion, the drinking bit.
Yeah, I mean, Belloc would be a villain that would fit perfectly.
They call him Beloche.
Beloche. I mean, and Walter Donovan too. I
love Walter Donovan.
Yeah, and he plays Walter. Let me tell you, Walter Donovan's been in fucking everything. He was in The Empire Strikes Back. He was in For Your Eyes Only. He's fucking Maester Pycelle in Game of Thrones.
I was about to say, that's probably where everyone really knows him now is from Game of Thrones as Maester Pycelle.
Yeah.
People that don't know the names, he's the guy that is always carrying them keys around with
the Julian Glover.
He's the guy who had he's the guy who had the good sense to die in season 6, so he wouldn't have to be in the atrocity that was season 8.
He's also in For Your Eyes Only, unless you have already said that already.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
He's also in Troy.
But
by the way, did you guys know that he's in For Your Eyes Only?
Oh, no.
He's also in Game of Thrones.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
Did you guys see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?
Yes. What's
up
with
that?
I've
never seen the movie. I don't know.
Well, it stars Julian Glover.
What?
Yeah.
You mean the guy from For Your Eyes Only?
No. He was also in Troy.
Oh, God.
People are gonna be like, is my fucking thing broken?
I'm leaving this in, by the way.
I wanted to also point out, just in terms of like borrowing obvious Bond tropes, exotic locales.
Yeah,
abound.
It's that's something we haven't talked about enough in Bond. Is that
we and I
part of the pleasure of that series at the time was going to these so-called exotic places.
But the
not everyone could travel.
Yeah, for sure. But I think the movies that were the most travelogues in the Bond canon are really the early Sean Connery ones, leading up to halfway. Really like
because I think that's why they luxuriate so much. It's like we're in Istanbul.
Yeah, exactly.
And the so shots are big, you know.
Yeah, but I think that's also something.
Now it's a quick drone shot.
Yeah, I think that's something that Indy picks up really nicely. It really takes advantage of the location.
Well, the famous travel map.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun,
dun, dun. Yeah,
we're heading here. We're going
it's
here.
Also, I mean that in particular, it is entirely the whole idea behind I want to make a Bond movie, and George Lucas being like, okay, we'll go to South America, and then we'll end up in Cairo, and then we'll end up over here, and they want to explore that exoticism of just being able to travel around the world, a worldly character, someone who's going to go everywhere to get the job done. And
fucking awesome.
That's an obvious homage and influence that got them going with the idea in the first place. Something that's not really in the Indiana Jones franchise is like, well, he's an archaeologist, he's a professor, he doesn't have like a bunch of gadgets or anything like James Bond. He's not like a superhero, super spy type character, but like he definitely has his arsenal.
Well, but I think one thing that he also shares with James Bond is that he's also not an outright hero. There's something that's not, that is
he's a rogue.
Yeah, he's a rogue. He does have a roguish way about him, because listen, Bond isn't a hero. In most of the movies, he's not an out and out hero. He's a spy, a very good spy. He's a soldier almost, but he's not, he's not Superman or Batman. He's not a hero in the sense that he's doing things for the sake of altruism. He's doing things for Queen and country. Mm-hmm. And saving the world in the process, which is great. Indy is a grave robber, and I think that there is something to be said about the fact that they're not quite anti-heroes, the both of them, but they have like anti-hero edges to them, and I think that that's something that's I think that the Bond series, I feel, gave them permission to not necessarily make this guy a cookie cutter, aw shucks hero. It's like make him rough around the edges.
Murderer.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. I kind of feel like, Die Hard gets a lot of credit, and rightfully so, for being the, oh man, we're doing like the everyman hero, where he doesn't even have his shoes on half the time. He's not gonna have the fucking support like a super spy or like a Bond or something like that. And it's like I get it. I get that it's an important step in that direction. But I think it really started with Indy. Indy is not...
Well, in the sense of getting hurt stuff.
Yeah, like Indy gets fucked up in all 3 and all 4 of these movies.
And it's not just like walk it off. Like Indy, I mean, they have the whole bit of like, he like everything fucking...
Yeah, he's always in pain by the end of the movie.
Yeah,
it's not the years, it's the mileage.
Yeah, and then he finally he gets the kiss from the girl, and it's looking great, and then he just passes the fuck out.
That's the one comedy bit that I'm like, I kind of eye roll, because he's like looking in the mirror like, and all of a sudden like her side of the mirror is like fuzzy or something, so she flips it and it fucking clocks him in the chin, and he yells to the point that they cut outside on the water and you can hear him, and she just goes, "You say something," and I'm just like,
I love
wackety, it. Wackety do. Like it's just like it's like a little too
and
much.
the WB.
Yeah.
That racist frog from the WB.
Yeah, like I'm just like, it's a little much, but whatever.
I mean, I was also just taking out other like connections with the Bond franchise again, and I wanted to just point out, like, I think what's very clear is like, as singular characters in their own respected series, they have their iconic look.
Yeah,
and that is like, as soon as they arrive, even before you see their face, you're like, I know exactly who that is, and it's it's inherent. It's like they create a mystique around their character that makes them recognizable, like Rick was saying in the opening of Raiders and how we're introduced to Indy there. And that the hat becomes literally a staple of his character, and the hat is literally stapled into Harrison Ford's head. I don't know.
That's not true.
That's not true.
That famously went around because of a video gag he did.
I know.
Okay. Some people believed it though.
No, I know. It's fucking ridiculous.
I mean,
but,
yeah.
But I think it's important to point out, like, Joan, like the Indiana Jones franchise owes so much to the groundwork that the James Bond series laid out for them to succeed on.
Yeah, for sure.
By relying on their sort of roadmap for success and serialization in movies, because like we said, before the Indiana Jones franchise, before the Indiana Jones franchise and before the James Bond franchise became a franchise, there just was no series of movies that could really kind of, you could pick out and be like, I'm just going to throw one of these on, or, like it was a new concept, and it was something that Broccoli and the lot, they all really pioneered in a lot of ways.
No, for sure.
Yeah, they were huge. Those were huge movies.
For sure. I absolutely agree, and I think that's one of the beauties of both those series is that, it's not. You're right, John. They're not like the Star Wars movies, for example. Like, I can't imagine ever putting on Empire Strikes Back without watching A New Hope first. Like, I would want to watch those three movies back to back: New Hope, Empire, and then Return of the Jedi. But with Bond, with Indy, like, I can throw on Last Crusade and not watch Temple of Doom or Raiders of the Lost Ark just because I'm in the mood to watch Last Crusade that day. Or same thing with Temple, or same thing with a GoldenEye or Spy Who Loved Me or anything like that. I also find it kind of interesting that the year that Indy came out was the year that For Your Eyes Only came out, which was kind of...
I thought you were going to do the Batman thing. I was like,
no.
Here we go again.
No. I mean, I you know what? No, I have to kind of eat my words. I was going to say how For Your Eyes Only was the first proper MacGuffin movie of the Bond series. And I mean, I guess that distinction kind of goes to From Russia with Love. But it kind of hadn't been done since then. And For Your Eyes Only, 1981. And that's the year that Indy came out. I just thought that was interesting. Just like an interesting correlation, how they kind of, they're
only for you. Sorry,
For Your Eyes Only. So yeah, I think this series clearly owes a lot to Bond, and but we also love it on its own merits. There was some great action, great characters, great direction from Spielberg.
It's easy to imitate, but Indiana Jones is pure inspiration.
Absolutely. Now, I want to ask you guys, I'm going to end the conversation on this because it's a Bond podcast. Obviously, we're talking Indiana Jones on this episode. What would you guys think a Steven Spielberg directed Bond film would look like? And what era do you think it would have been made with? Would he have made it during the Moore era? Would he maybe do a current one? Or where would you maybe put him on the timeline? And what would you like to see from like a Spielberg directed Bond film? Just for like for fuck's sake, let's check. What would we like to see?
That's a fun hypothetical. I'm gonna have to think about that. I don't know, Rick.
I don't know, John.
I don't know, Tony.
Oh boy, I really thought that this was gonna.
Whoa.
I mean, I don't think it's too dissimilar in terms of energy.
Yeah.
From the way he did the Indy movies, a different flavor, just because Indy's a different flavor. Yeah. I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Especially that, frankly, Spielberg was a little kind of cooties with sex a little bit in his movies before, frankly, Schindler's List. Now, I mean, there's not a lot of sex in Schindler's List.
No.
But it's the first time that like sexuality is presented as just like as it is, as opposed to let me do a gag, let me make a funny out of it.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing, like he does before the lovemaking in Raiders, which there is no lovemaking actually. He passes out.
Yeah.
It never really happens in Temple of Doom. It
well, it kind of all goes out the window when you have Indy in Last Crusade have a relationship with the same woman who had a relationship with his dad. So it's kind of like,
well, that's later. That's 89. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think if Spielberg was going to direct a Bond, it probably would have been the 80s.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. It would have been, I don't know, it would have been interesting if he did Living Daylights or something like that.
When
but then again, I don't know. I don't see 90s Spielberg doing Bond by that point.
Interesting.
At that point, he's turned into an evil man. No, I mean, like, he's he evolves in the 90s, you know? He makes Jurassic Park is almost like everyone I think loves that movie so much because it's kind of the farewell of that Spielberg people think of like the grand fantasy real, you know, like suburbia fantasy adventure, but you know, it makes the real amazing and awe-inducing and all that. That's like the last hurrah of that, because then he does Schindler's List, and I think he's not the same filmmaker after that.
No, I mean, well, he's made a lot of great movies since then, but
no, absolutely, but it's not
sure.
this. I mean, I know he does Lost World, but you watch Lost World, I think the reason why people don't like it is that it doesn't go for, or even it doesn't have the magic of that first movie, and so I think that's why people look at it as like, that's a really disappointing movie. It's like, because it didn't give them that feel that they got from the first one.
Yeah, I mean, it's
more a monster movie.
Yeah, I really enjoy Lost World on those terms.
I think it's got some really great sequences. I remember being in the theater, and when they're in the bus laboratory and she's on the window, she falls on it and is like, "Oh God, is everyone okay?" And all of a sudden she looks down and it just starts cracking. I remember being in the theater just like, huh? Like the tension of that, you know.
So let's figure out a different way to end this, because I like what you said, Rick, but we're gonna have to figure out something else.
I had a good answer all worked
out. Oh, you had a good answer?
You asked me a question, and I was expected to have an answer, and now
there's no time.
Okay.
So what was your other idea, Tony?
No, it's okay.
No, but I think you're making an excellent point. I don't think this is worth cutting out. I think it's a really good point. You're right. Spielberg had a turning point when he because he did Hook.
Yeah.
Bombed. Then he did right back to back with that. He did Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, Jurassic Park, then Schindler's.
Right. My mistake. Hook, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List. But you're right. Like, he had just decided I'm done with spectacle and I want to start getting into more human stories. But I think if you catch him earlier on, he would have totally wanted to do a James Bond movie like in the 70s or the 80s.
70s Spielberg is actually maybe even more intriguing. Like maybe like right after Close Encounters, or maybe right after.
That's
Jaws.
what I was thinking. I was thinking, honestly, like I would have kind of liked to see what he would have done with something like, I dared to say it, but like Moonraker.
You know what? I think he could have made.
God help us.
I mean, it's not a good movie. There's not a lot there, but like if you get the right director in the room in the development process, that can change everything.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been fun for him to play in the sci-fi landscape, which is something he doesn't fuck around much in, and also do a James Bond movie. And well, yeah, I know Close Encounters, but I'm saying like
Minority Report. And more.
Okay, I know, but I'm just saying like as a James Bond movie, also being a sci-fi adventure, I think he would have had a lot of fun with those genres and blending things, and also taking an opportunity to play with technology, production design, and art direction, and the Adam design scale and how inspired he's been. Like you would have just seen him drawing all the influence from everything that came before and trying to set a stage for things that can come later. And that's a movie that sorely needs direction. So it would have been interesting to see him handle something like that, maybe.
And that's the thing. I absolutely agree. And the thing is, I half agree with you guys that he abandoned. Well, I don't think he abandoned spectacle after Jurassic Park in '93. I think it was just more. that was the last great film from his more spectacle-driven side that he made since after making Schindler's List, because he's done plenty of spectacle type films since then. The BFG,
but they're a different bent from those.
They are different bent, but that's even Ready Player One, but they just don't quite click. They haven't quite.
I don't want you to misinterpret what I said. What I said was he started to focus less on spectacle and more on human stories. Like he wanted to focus more on people in the stories and less on making the dinosaur work or making the shark work or make that work.
He starts doing. I think
that's fair.
Yeah, he starts doing darker themes and stuff. Like Minority Report is not fun.
Catch Me If You Can is my favorite movie of his and is one of the most revealing. You know what? I mean, there's a perfect example of him.
It's very personal.
Very personal, and personal in a way that is unexpected because he also goes right ahead and references James Bond and is like, I connect with someone like Francis Abagnale. I wanted to be that escapist young individual.
Well, yeah, and the movie's meant a lot to him, and the common theme throughout much of Spielberg's work is a child of divorce.
It's about family.
I mean, I think that's all very valid. I think I agree with you guys. I would like to have seen him do something in like the 70s, 80s. Probably would have done something with Roger Moore, but I also see him fitting quite nicely, given his more darker, more character-driven bent after Schindler's List, doing something in the Craig era. I don't think that by the time that Brosnan comes around, he's kind of doing a very similar thing to what, on a bigger scale, to what Roger Moore was doing. It's not all that different. It's still very much in the same vein as those movies, just with a little more computer animation. So Spielberg doing a movie in that era kind of is like, I don't know about that. He's kind of abandoned it by the time the GoldenEye and stuff gets really going. But when I see stuff like Munich, like Bridge of Spies, I kind of think like, you know what?
But those are very.
Those are aiming for realism.
Yeah, they're aiming for realism, but I also think that I trust Spielberg as a filmmaker to say like, okay, I kind of want to go down this road, but I also have to remember I'm making it a James Bond movie. And I think that if he wasn't, I think he could really balance that well in the Craig era. Like if he had doing something like A No Time to Die, I think he would have been a great choice for Quantum of Solace, quite frankly. We talked about that in the last episode, but it's I guess for me it's more like it was either or was extreme. If it was going to be like the big spectacle driven Spielberg that I love from the 80s into the early 90s, that's the perfect era because that was when his sort of
I have one after when you're done, Tony.
Oh, for sure. But those inclinations of the kind of movie that that the Bond film people were making and what he wanted to make, it would have fit like a glove if he had done something in the Roger Moore, possibly the Timothy Dalton era. I don't think it would have worked in the Brosnan era with where his trajectory was going, and it kind of comes full circle where it's like I could see him doing something that's akin to a Munich, or that's not quite as intense, that maybe actually more like Minority Report, a Minority Report type Bond film that has a little more style to it and a little more of that wit. So it's kind of either or. I mean, he's such a versatile director. I think he could have pulled
the Minority Report thing. I can kind of see.
Yeah, Minority Report's probably the better example than the ones that I gave. What were you gonna say, Rick?
Paul Verhoeven.
Paul Verhoeven for a Bond film?
Oh, Spielberg should direct Paul Verhoeven
in James Bond. No, no. I just thought Paul Verhoeven as a director of a James
he
Bond
would have
film.
been fucking wonderful as a Bond director, but I don't think he would have any.
Very violent.
I don't think he would have any interest in doing a Bond film.
I don't. But if I had to do with James Bond, I would make him very.
He would try too hard to make it a social.
Well, I would do it. Well, but he did. But he always balanced it with entertainment. He didn't bash you over the head.
He's subversive.
And here is where I know I'm going to lose everyone. Arnold Schwarzenegger as James Bond.
Oh, he did it though. He did Total Recall. I mean, that is a full-on Bond-inspired spy thriller, but it's a sci-fi action.
It's
movie.
Quantum of Solace, and now it's Arnold.
I would have loved to see that shit.
I'll be Bond.
There you go.
I
don't care about
Have you guys ever
the
seen
bitch is dead.
Have you guys ever seen Jean-Pierre Melville's Army of Shadows?
No.
But I have a license to terminate you.
Well, I was gonna throw it out there. I feel like you can just cut this though. But in the world of spy films, you've got the spy who came in from the cold, kind of setting the bar for now we can make seemingly trashy spy novels into these classics. Well, I mean that's what that book taught everybody, and then they made the movie, and they're like, oh, whoa, a spy thriller movie? You mean this isn't just a pulp novel? This isn't just a comic book. This is a movie. And Jean-Pierre Melville later on, he made this film called Army of Shadows, which I highly recommend if you're interested in seeing a really harrowing tale of courage and selflessness.
Not interested.
So extremely tragic. It is the story of French spies during World War II and the brutality and the darkness of what being a spy really was. Getting information, the simplicity and complexities of that, and having to eliminate threats. It is a dark, dark, dark world they go down in that film. And yeah, I think if Spielberg directed a Craig Bond, it would be a lot more similar to a movie like Army of Shadows. And it would be really dark.
But doesn't that go down the rabbit hole, though, of like now it's not really Bond anymore?
Well, what is Bond but what the directors make it? Like you can say.
But we've talked about how but those tropes that didn't work and does work for these other movies. So
these new Craig Bonds, they don't like to adhere to all the rules of the previous James Bond movies,
except when they do.
And that's the thing. It's dependent on what the producers think is the right trend or steps to take with the next chapter, and that's also indicative of who they decide to put in the director's chair. So I don't think that they would even consider someone like Spielberg, but in the hypothetical sense, if you want to put him in our era, I think take a look at Army of Shadows and maybe let me know what you think. But I think you can cut my whole commentary on Army of Shadows. I have no idea what I'm talking about. So I
wish Spielberg had done a Superman.
That would have been cool.
Ooh. Oh my God!
A child of divorce. I mean, really, that's the really good connection. It's all about family, his connection with the Kents, etc. Yeah.
You just got my fucking dick hard. I'm sorry.
Whoa. I can't mute you, Tony.
Oh God, he's showing us.
It's just the idea of a fucking Spielberg Superman movie.
You still get John
Williams score.
Hey.
All right. So let's wrap this puppy up. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, guys, this was awesome to discuss this great movie series. That
I had a great time.
Thank you, Rick. I'm glad you had a wonderful time.
Good job, Rick.
Thanks, man. Good night, everybody.
All right. Yeah. So we want to. So yeah. So blah. So yeah, I mean, I think we had a great discussion about these movies. Wherever they fall in our ranking, this character has a very special place in our hearts, and Bond had a lot to do with it. But there's also so much that Indy brings to the Indiana Jones movies bring to the table that it's an entity unto itself. And I'm really, really grateful to have had this conversation with you guys. I love talking Indiana Jones, and even though I got torn apart a little.
Oh, stop it! You're martyring yourself. We weren't attacking you.
And maybe we've inspired you to take a second look at Temple of Doom. I'm grateful for that.
I've rewatched Temple of Doom quite a bit. Like, I like the movie. I really, really do. It was just my least favorite. That's all.
That's fine, man.
What I'm gonna laugh at is like if John and I rewatch it and we're like, oh no, this is horrifying.
Yeah, man. But yeah, this was a great discussion. I really love talking about these movies. I love talking these movies with you guys in particular. Wherever these movies rank holds a special place in our hearts, and I'm really grateful For Bond.
Well, they don't care what we think. They made their money.
Yeah, no, they don't give a shit. But hey,
are they on Disney Plus?
No, they're not. They're not.
That's really odd.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're holding off until like when Indy 5.
God,
it's a rights thing, though, right? Isn't it owned by Paramount?
No.
I wonder, is that it?
No, I think Lucasfilm holds the rights to that exclusively. And
you think they're waiting for a big, like, they get that fifth one?
Yeah, and that's
please don't happen.
Yeah, the fifth
it's
one.
happening.
Yeah, I mean, look, James Mangold. I'm in. I'm in if James Mangold's doing the movie.
I'm happy Spielberg's going to step away from it. I think it's good.
So I think it's good, and
but Harrison Ford is too old, and I'm not saying that to be shitty about.
Well, then they should recast him. Why is everybody so fucking sensitive?
You say that all the time, but I don't want to see Indiana Jones recasted.
Yeah, but you're fine with James Bond getting recasted every fucking 10 years or something.
Am I?
Are you going to be sad when Daniel Craig goes away?
Am I?
Well, I think this is a good place as any to wrap up our discussion of Indiana Jones. I am so grateful I got to talk about these movies with you guys. I love these movies. I think, if you're cinephiles like us, at some point the Indiana Jones movies are talked about with reverence because they are everything that cinema has to offer. They're wonderful films, and I'm really grateful that we got a chance to talk about it today. Thank you guys for listening. You Know His Name will return in 2 weeks with our discussion of Dr. No. Oh yeah, the very first James Bond film, Sean Connery's first Bond film, and it's going to be a great discussion, guys. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. From all of us at You Know His Name, we want you guys to stay safe out there, and remember, nobody does it better. Good night.